Okay, beginning on my left is Dr. Julie Howard, who is Chief Scientist in USAID's Bureau for Food Security and is also the Senior Advisor to Administrator Rajiv Shah on agricultural research, education, and extension, clearly a key interface for our board. She received her PhD in agricultural economics from Michigan State University and received her MS and BS, respectively, from the University of California at Davis and George Washington University. She has a long commitment to development, serving as Peace Corps volunteer earlier in the Dominican Republic. And before joining USAID in 2011, she served as the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Partnership to Cut Hunger and Poverty in Africa. Dr. Howard is also an accomplished scholar, publishing on improved effectiveness of food security assistance and agricultural development and transfer. I will proceed, Julie, to introduce other members of the board, and then we'll begin back with you for your presentation. To my immediate left is Dr. Sahara Moon Shapoten, who is currently team leader for agricultural research in the Bureau of Food Security at USAID. Dr. Shapoten received her PhD degree in plant physiology from Harvard University and received her master's and bachelor's from Stanford and the College of the Desert in Palm Desert, California, respectively. Prior to joining BFS in 2011, Dr. Shapoten was a biotechnology advisor in USAID. She was also a AAAS fellow serving at USAID. Dr. Shapoten has published on the safety of genetically modified crops and also on the baobab trees in Madagascar. Very interesting mix of backgrounds that I know many in this audience and those on the web will be very fascinated by. To my immediate right is Dr. Dale Buttrell, who's a professor emeritus of entomology at the University of Maryland in College Park and continues to mentor graduate students and teach courses with distance education tools. He received his PhD and bachelor's degrees from Oklahoma State University in entomology. Prior to coming to the University of Maryland, Dr. Buttrell was head of the Entomology Research Division at the International Rice Research Institute in Los Baños, Philippines. In the mid-1970s, he was staff consultant to the President's Council on Environmental Quality and authored a publication that led to the development of federal agency approaches to integrated pest management, or IPM, as we have been discussing. He was also a faculty member in entomology at Texas A&M University. Dr. Buttrell has evaluated pest and pesticide management projects in 25 USAID countries. He's a widely published author on IPM and a fellow of the Entomological Society of America. To my far right is Dr. Sylvie Bruder. Did I pronounce that correctly? Bruder. Sylvie Bruder. Dr. Bruder is professor of agronomy and was recently named as Wickersham Chair of Agricultural Research at Purdue University. She received her PhD degree in ecology at the University of California at Davis and her bachelor's degree at Harvard. Prior to joining the faculty and rising through the academic ranks at Purdue, Dr. Bruder was postdoctoral associate in agroecology at UC Davis. She's a widely published author, including a role as lead editor for the proceedings of an international conference on plant nutrition and sustainable development. She's a fellow of the American Society of Agronomy. Besides her research efforts and teaching responsibilities, Dr. Bruder has been involved closely with the development of and delivery of diagnostic tools, criteria, and interpretive guides for assisting farmers in improving nutrient use efficiency in the Purdue Extension Outreach Program. So we're very pleased to have this distinguished panel with us, and I'll begin on my left with Julie.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Deaton. And I want to say on behalf of Administrator Shah and the USAID team here, thank you very much to you and to the entire community here at the University of Missouri for welcoming us all so warmly to your campus, to your beautiful campus. And remembering that the University of Missouri has its own proud history and tradition of wonderful scholarship and outreach and work and engagements of students and faculties and administrators in international agricultural and rural development. It's really a special honor to be here, and especially an honor to be here in such a prestigious place as the Reynolds Journalism Institute. So thanks very much for that. I'm going to say just a few things to sort of cast the broad framework, for Feed the Future and the place of agricultural research in Feed the Future, where we are now and where we're going over the next few years. First, I want to say that we're really living in an amazing and extraordinary time when, after decades of, literally decades of disinvestment by the international community in agricultural development, really a gap from the Green Revolution in the 1970s, to a pretty steep fall off in the 80s and 90s. After decades of disinvestment, the 2007 and 2008 food price crisis, where we saw urban riots, we saw governments fall, just this realization that we were running out of this period when we had large stocks of food and could meet any sort of crisis, sort of coming to a realization with population growing to 9 billion a few years. By 2050, the realization that we're going to need to increase our food production by 70%. Pretty daunting stuff. It was a watershed moment, 2007, 2008. In my career, I remember thinking that this was the moment when food security, agricultural development stopped being sort of a niche issue and became, for the US, an issue of national security, and for the world, an issue of global security. So what's Feed the Future? Feed the Future is the US initiative launched by President Obama at the 2009 G8 summit in L'Aquila, Italy. This is really the US response to that call, that watershed moment in 2007, 2008. This is the US global hunger and food security strategy. This is the attempt to say we can't fix this problem anymore with just food aid. We really need to get very serious about increasing the ability of countries themselves to improve their agricultural productivity and do it in an environmentally sustainable way, in a way that recognizes the critical role of women in agricultural production, and also brings in the key issue of nutrition, which really had not been linked very purposefully with agriculture before. So this is a major effort. So back in 2009, President Obama asked Administrator Shah at USAID to lead this initiative, to lead it on behalf of the government, meaning USAID leading, but really drawing on the resources across the US government, the resources of the State Department, of the Treasury Department, of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, especially of the US Department of Agriculture, and many others. All of these have equities and skills and expertise related to food and nutrition security. So this is an effort to really draw all of those in. President Obama at this G8 summit pledged that the US would spend $3.5 billion over 3 years. That's a huge increase for us who have been living on crumbs for many years. More importantly, though, in addition to this increase in resources, he also leveraged an additional $18.5 billion in commitments from other donors. So this, again, was the beginning of not just the US coming back into this field, but of other donors coming back in as well, and pledging with the US to do this kind of development assistance in a different way. What do we mean by that? We mean, Bill, you and I will have a discussion about this afterwards, but it means really trying our best to work against country-led priorities. And it's admittedly easier in some countries than others. We've got a huge jump start in Africa with the work that's been done over a decade and putting into place really strong evidence-based agricultural plans. But you're right, it is challenging in other places. Against country-led priorities. Again, bringing in aspects of nutrition that we hadn't really considered before, paying attention to gender, bringing in private sector investment. This is really huge. So that's Feed the Future. And Feed the Future really laid the foundation. We continue with Feed the Future, but received also a major boost with the G8 summit and the US presidency of the G8 this past year. When, again, President Obama with Administrator Shah made global food security a big priority. And as Feed the Future really focused on concentrating and coordinating and increasing resources from the public sector, from the donor community, the G8 New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition reiterated that, built on that foundation, but also initiated several programs to bring in private sector investment, and several $1 billion have been committed for investment in African countries against plans. So let's turn briefly to what's agricultural research in all of this. We've been talking about Feed the Future as the broad framework. One more thing, important thing that I forgot to mention, sorry. As another way that we're doing development assistance differently, President Obama and Administrator Shah have really called for us to be much more results-oriented, transparent, and accountable. And so we're very proud to release the first report. This came out late last year. And I got some copies for you outside the door, but please take a look at this, send us any questions and comments and suggestions, and we're working on the next report as we speak. Okay, agricultural research is really at the heart of Feed the Future. In a resource sense, we've significantly increased the funding for research. We were at about $60 million per year, 2008 in central funding, and we've doubled that, more than doubled that. Last year, we spent $135 million in agricultural research. But as we've been saying, it's not just about more resources. It's really about programming these resources in a different way. It's about working with partners. It's about working on country-led priorities. So what does that mean in the research area? I want to talk a little bit about the role of BIFAD, the role of APLU, the role of U.S. universities, the role that you all have played really in helping us think through what does doing agricultural research differently really mean. Well, back in 2010, Gabisa will remember he played such a strong role in this. We initiated a consultation among universities, among global research partners. We aimed at identifying what would be the key aspects of a new Feed the Future agricultural research strategy. So over about an 18-month period, this research strategy was developed. Overarching goal of this consultation, overarching goal of the research strategy that was developed was sustainable intensification and three overarching themes: advancing the productivity frontier, transforming key production systems, improving nutrition and food safety, especially as an elevated priority. Together with these themes, the strategy and the subsequent USAID implementation of this strategy really said to be effective, we have to focus our resources, focus not only in these thematic areas, but focus geographically. And so we looked at areas where hunger and poverty overlap, where there's this greatest potential for agricultural productivity. And so our key areas for research are the Indo-Gangetic Plains of South Asia, the Sudano-Sahelian systems in West Africa, and the maize and mixed cropping systems of East and Southern Africa. So that's the framework that we established together with all of you, the university community, and our global research partners at the CGIAR. Again, Administrator came back to us and said, let's think about the role of U.S. universities really in operationalizing this research strategy. So Chancellor Deaton will remember, again, kind of watershed set of meetings at the APLU annual meeting in 2011. Administrator Shah met with about a dozen university presidents and met, I think, first with Chancellor Deaton and expressed his wish to say, U.S. universities are such a vibrant, creative force of energy. They've had such a signal role in the U.S.'s own development and have been really important, of course, in all the ways that we've mentioned this morning in capacity strengthening and research. But it's his sense that we're not effectively harnessing, we're not effectively tapping into that creative energy enough. The relationship had really evolved into too much of a contractor and contractee or grantor and grantee relationship. So he was seeking some different ways where we could re-energize and reinvigorate that relationship. So we've done a couple of things. First of all, Administrator Shah asked BIFAD to do a report for him that would look at the U.S. university engagement in agricultural research and make some significant recommendations. And so we're really very proud of the high quality team that Chancellor Deaton and the BIFAD board put together, and the high quality report that was the product of that. So it was really a tremendously reflective time for all of us at USAID, the period of the interviews around that report, the engagement with our external partners. And you can read the report. It's on the web. I think it's on the BIFAD website. So I won't go into detail. But I wanted to talk about one of the significant recommendations that came from that report. And this was, I think it was actually the #1 recommendation. It said, how can we do agricultural research programming differently in a way that doesn't isolate our U.S. university programs, the CRISP, as we're now calling them, innovation labs. How is it that we can do that? And as we started thinking about that, we realized this is not just an issue of stovepiping the CRISP. It's actually, a challenge for us in how to integrate our research efforts more broadly. So we thought a long time, and Sahara Moon and her colleagues have done a tremendous amount of work on this. But what we came up with was we decided we need actually a new management entity to create new institutional incentives for us and for our research partners to work in a different way. And that entity is called the Feed the Future Food Security Innovation Center. So what does this do? The Food Security Innovation Center clusters our related research projects by theme instead of individual projects. So we've got 7 different themes and multiple projects within each theme. So what are these themes? I'm not going to go into detail. Sahara Moon will talk about some of them, but cereals, legume productivity, plant and animal diseases, sustainable intensification, safe and nutritious foods, policy, human and institutional capacity strengthening. So across those themes, then, we've got 4 or 5 different projects implemented by different partners, U.S. universities, the CGIAR system, private sector. So what are we trying to do? We have in each of these themes, now we have a theme leader, and it's that theme leader's responsibility to connect all the projects across the theme and make sure they're talking to one another and make sure they're talking to the missions as well about, what happens to the products of the research in each of those themes. What are we hoping to get from this? We've just really got about 3 months of implementation of this food security innovations. We want to set our objectives, our targets across programs and not just projects. We want to encourage a multidisciplinary approach. We want to encourage better linkages among related projects and cross-project learning. So we're quite excited about that, and we're already beginning to see the effects, of that better integration and coordination. We just last week had a major meeting of the Innovation Lab CRISP in Morogoro, Tanzania, and it wasn't. I think for one of the first times, it was not just a meeting of the CRISP. It also included many, many mission representatives. The missions, in turn, invited their development partners, their implementing partners, the NGOs and the private contractors. They invited representatives from the CGIAR system. So it really was a much fuller discussion, of what's going on with the innovation labs and what are the possibilities for partnering in the field to begin to get innovations out. So lastly, I want to talk about how Administrator Shah has most recently challenged us about research and about getting the products of research out to the field. Administrator Shah gave a major speech to the International Food Policy Research Institute back in December, and speaking to the board chairs for the CG centers, as well as the directors of all of the CG centers. And he asked that his comments then be distributed to every USAID mission in the field. So what Administrator Shah said it's amazing, really, when we think about the potential that we have, what we've already achieved through our collective research efforts. And we were just reviewing this last week with our USAID colleagues. We've got amazing new cowpea varieties. We've got striga-resistant seeds. We've got amazing new knowledge about the impact of orange-fleshed sweet potatoes and how it really is reducing stunting. Reducing vitamin A deficiency in a very significant way among children. We've got biological control of papaya mealy bugs that's saving the incomes, of many farmers in India. So we've got all these things, but we have this conundrum that we have the technologies, but they're really not being scaled up adequately. Administrator Shah said at this speech in December, we did a quick kind of run-up of what technology is out there available. And we found that in Kenya and in Ghana, where maize is an important staple in both of those countries, that the predominant variety in use dates from the 1980s in each case. And not that they're not, excellent, good varieties, but there are many, many other varieties out there that are not getting to the farmers. And so that the question that came out there was, well, why is that? What must we do both as researchers to make sure that the products of our research are known to the public sector seed certification and laboratory and the seed system, as well as getting out to the private sector? What do we have to do differently to make sure that those products go out? And challenging us to connect much better with the missions, the missions who have many implementing partners who are working in the fields, are doing extension programs, partners like AGRA, Catherine talked about, have long experience with reforming seed systems, helping key varieties get out. So he's really charged us not only to think about generating new technologies, but what it will take to significantly scale those adoption figures in the field. And that became a focus of a major set of programs that were launched as well during the G8. So let me stop there. I know we want to focus more specifically now on sustainable intensification and IPM, but I just wanted to explain to you already the major role that the U.S. university community and the BIFAD have had in some major changes in our research program, the impact that it's having, and how the administrator has challenged us to see this as not only a challenge of generating technologies, but in making sure that these are carrying through to the field.
Julie, thank you. Excellent overview, and we'll